Here's something nobody tells you about not having enough money. It makes you worse at managing money, not because you're irresponsible, not because you don't care, but because the experience of financial scarcity, the constant low-grade stress of not having enough, physically changes the way your brain works. It narrows your focus, it shortens your thinking, it makes the decisions that keep you broke feel like the only decisions available. Being broke isn't just a financial condition, it's a cognitive one. And until you understand what it's actually doing to your mind, you can work harder, earn more, and still end up exactly where you started. In 2013, a team of economists and psychologists ran a series of experiments on scarcity. They tested people on cognitive function, things like problem solving, impulse control, and the ability to think about the future. And what they found was striking. People who were experiencing financial stress performed significantly worse on every measure, not because they were less intelligent, because the mental bandwidth required to manage financial stress was consuming resources that would otherwise go towards thinking clearly. They called it the bandwidth tax. Every time you have to figure out whether you can afford groceries this week, whether the rent is going to bounce, whether you should pay the electric bill or the credit card, your brain is spending cognitive resources that are finite, resources that are no longer available for anything else. The poor aren't making bad decisions because they don't know better. They're making bad decisions because their brains are running on empty, and the system never mentioned that part. When resources are scarce, the brain does something automatic and involuntary. It tunnels. It locks focus onto the immediate problem, the thing that needs solving right now, and filters out everything else. This was useful for our ancestors. When you're being chased by something that wants to eat you, you don't need to be thinking about the next month's rent. You need to be thinking about the next 10 seconds. But financial scarcity triggers the same tunnel. And in the modern context, that tunnel is quietly catastrophic. When you're focusing on making it to payday, you can't think clearly about next year. When you're trying to cover this month's rent, the idea of an emergency fund feels completely abstract. When the immediate crisis is all your brain can see, long-term planning doesn't just feel hard, it feels genuinely impossible. And here's the cruel part. The decisions that look the most irrational from the outside, the payday loan, the impulse purchase, the skipped bill, often make complete sense inside the tunnel. They solve the immediate problem. They relieve immediate pressure. They work right now. The cost comes later, but inside the tunnel, later barely exists. There's a phrase that sounds harsh until you understand what it means. It's expensive to be poor, not as a moral statement, as a financial reality. When you don't have savings, a $300 car repair becomes a $400 payday loan that becomes $600 paid back over 3 months. When you cannot afford a monthly transit pass, you pay per ride. That costs more over time. When you cannot buy in bulk, you pay more per unit for everything. When you have no buffer, every unexpected expense gets solved with the most expensive available option. The financial system charges more for having less, and that premium compounds. Someone with savings absorbs a car repair and moves on. Someone without savings goes into debt to fix the same car, pays interest on that debt, has less money next month because of the payment, which means less buffer, which means the next unexpected expense hits even harder. The gap doesn't stay the same size, it grows. And the mechanism that grows it is invisible if you've never lived inside it. Here's something that doesn't show up in any financial advice column. The cognitive cost of being broke is relentless. It's not one stressful moment, it's constant, back hum of calculation that never fully turns off. Can I afford this? Should I have bought that? What happens if the car breaks down? What happens if I get sick? What if I lose my job? This is not anxiety in the clinical sense. This is rational threat assessment running continuously in the background of every single day. Your brain doing exactly what it's supposed to do in an environment where resources are genuinely uncertain. But it is exhausting, and it consumes the exact mental resources you would need to plan your way out of the situation. The person working 2 jobs to make rent is not failing to build wealth because they lack ambition. They're failing to build wealth because there's no mental bandwidth left at the end of the day to think about anything beyond survival. And the advice to just invest 10% of your income or build a 6-month emergency fund assumes a baseline of stability that the scarcity mindset, by definition, does not have. This is the part that confuses people who have never experienced long-term financial scarcity. When someone who has been broke for a long time suddenly gets money, a tax refund, a bonus, inheritance, it often disappears faster than anyone can explain. From the outside, it looks like irresponsibility. From the inside, it's something else entirely. The scarcity mindset doesn't switch off the moment money arrives. The tunnel doesn't instantly open up. What happens instead is that the brain, finally relieved of the immediate pressure, floods with all the needs that have been suppressed and deferred during the period of scarcity. The thing that broke 6 months ago and never got fixed, the medical appointment that kept getting postponed, the birthday that got ignored, the clothes that wore out, the things that didn't happen because there was never money for them. All of that arrived at once, and the money that looked like a windfall gets absorbed immediately into deferred needs. That's not that the person didn't want to save it, it's that the savings never had a chance against the accumulated weight of everything that had been waiting. There's one more layer to this that almost nobody talks about. When you live in financial scarcity long enough, it stops being something you're experiencing and starts being something you are. I'm bad with money. I'm not a financial person. People like me don't build wealth. This is just how my family is. These aren't just thoughts, they're identity statements. And identity is one of the most powerful forces governing human behavior. We act in ways that are consistent with who we believe we are. And if who you believe you are is someone who is bad with money, then every financial decision gets filtered through that belief. The scarcity mindset becomes self-reinforcing, not just through economics, but through self-concept. The trap has a lock on the inside. So why does being broke keep you broke? Not because of laziness, not because of stupidity, not because some people are just bad with money and others aren't. Because scarcity creates a cognitive environment where the decision that feels most rational are the ones that solve today's problems at tomorrow's expense. Because the mental bandwidth required to manage financial stress is bandwidth that can't be used for anything else. Because the financial system is structured to extract more from people who have less. And because the identity that forms around long-term scarcity can feel more permanent than it actually is. The scarcity mindset is not a personality flaw. It's a predictable psychological response to a genuinely difficult environment. Understanding that doesn't make the environment easier, but it changes what you're fighting against. You're not fighting your own weakness. You're fighting a cognitive pattern that was designed by your circumstances, not your character. And patterns, unlike character, can be interrupted. The first interruption is the hardest. It usually looks less like a financial decision and more like a single moment of believing, just barely, that a different outcome is possible. That belief is where it starts. Everything else is just what comes after.